My mother-in-law picked up a child whose features were strikingly similar to my deceased husband. She called it fate, saying he was my husband reincarnated to repay my kindness, so I mobilized the entire clan to support him in becoming the heir to the marquisate. Yet later, after he achieved fame and success, he imprisoned me until I died in the woodshed of the back courtyard. My deceased husband brought his wife to my grave. Our son has seen you off in your final moments. So your life was worth living. Given a second chance at life, if they want to perform on stage, I'll cheer them on from the audience. I'll join them in performing a tragedy of family separation and utter ruin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. I opened my eyes and found myself reborn on the day my mother-in-law brought Xie Qingyi home. My mother-in-law held his hand, her eyes brimming with joy. Jingwan. Look at this child, his eyes and brows are so much like Nanfeng's. Seeing him feels just like having Nanfeng still by my side, and it truly brings me so much happiness. The heir chosen by your mother is truly 1 in 100. In my past life, the moment I laid eyes on this child, I marveled at the wonder of fate. Not only did his features resemble Xie Nanfeng's, but Xie Nanfeng had died while managing flood control exactly 4 years ago, and this child was also 4 years old. It was as if Xie Nanfeng had been reborn in him, easing my mother-in-law's grief over losing her son, so I immediately complied with my mother-in-law's wishes, raising him as my own heir and dedicating the entire family's resources to his education and future, striving to secure a bright path for him. But I could never forget how, in my past life, I was tormented to death by him. The dark, damp woodshed locked from the outside, the shackles cutting into my flesh, my blinded eyes. The swill-like food that never filled my stomach, and the maids and servants pinching their noses as they cursed and kicked me. Back then, in my despair and agony, I truly believed, as Xie Qingyi had said, that I had contracted some contagious disease that made everyone despise me and left me lingering in misery, until I could bear it no longer and pierced my throat with a chopstick to end my life. My husband, who had been dead for many years, stood lazily before the grave. Hand in hand with a noblewoman dressed in splendid attire, the child born to Shuang'er and I has called you mother for many years, and even arranged a dignified funeral for you. You've lived a worthwhile life. Even after enduring your oppression for so long, Ye still allowed you to keep your body intact. That alone has given you enough dignity. He wanted to spend his life with his beloved, yet couldn't bear to part with the wealth and status of the Marquis estate in this lifetime. I will surely fulfill Xie Nanfeng's wish to never part from his beloved, even in life and death, and their precious son naturally became the vulnerable weakness I held firmly in my grasp. If mother-in-law likes him, there's no harm in letting him stay in my courtyard. It's just that your daughter-in-law thinks he is quite suitable as well. I pointed my jade-like finger, directing it towards the young man sweeping under the corridor. Meng Yuan. The young man was frail and thin, as if a gust of wind could knock him over, yet he worked diligently, not missing a single withered leaf in the breeze. In my past life, I was locked in the woodshed by Xie Qingyi, and all the servants in the Marquis estate, eager to curry favor with the Marquis, took the opportunity to kick me a few more times. Only he, under the cover of night, climbed into the woodshed to feed me and apply medicine to my wounds. Even after my death, Xie Nanfeng placed the corpse-quelling pearl in my mouth, intending to condemn me to eternal unrest, yet it was also he who quietly pried open the coffin lid and retrieved the corpse-quelling pearl. The kindness I showed him was merely a few pieces of clothing and socks, yet he remembered it deeply and repaid me with genuine sincerity. For someone so understanding of gratitude and so willing to repay it, if I could choose the heir to the marquisate, why would I not choose him? Mother Xie looked troubled, her hand holding Xie Qingyi's trembling slightly. After all, he's the child of a servant. To make him your legitimate son, it's just, I explained with a gentle smile. Meng Yuan lost his mother at a young age. He entered the manor with his father, but within 3 years, his father disappeared along with the Marquis in the floodwaters of Linen. The Marquis's remains were at least recovered and laid to rest, but his father, no one knows where he drifted, without even a tombstone. Every time I see him, I wake up from nightmares in the middle of the night, always dreaming of Guard Meng stretching out his bloody hand to me. He must be worried about his only son, entrusting me to look after him. After all, I need to choose an heir to raise by my side. It's better for two children to keep each other company than for one to be lonely. This would also maintain the Xie family's reputation for treating servants well, a perfect solution for everyone. Speaking of guard Meng's remains, Lady Xie finally showed a trace of guilt on her face, because lying in the coffin of the Xie family's marquis was none other than Meng Zhao, yet he wasn't even worthy of having his own name, all to fulfill Xie Nanfeng's dream of one love for a lifetime, and the Xie family's decline was precisely due to their reputation, so she naturally hesitated. If he becomes your legitimate eldest son, then the position of the marquis's heir in the future. Lady Xie ultimately feared that the Xie family's marquis title would fall into the hands of an outsider, which was why she insisted on bringing Xie Chengyi back. Mother, do not worry, in our Xie family, the title of marquis should be given to the most capable, so as not to disgrace the century-old reputation and prestige left by our ancestors. Lady Xie hesitated slightly, but when she saw the cunning look in Xie Chengyi's eyes before her, she abandoned the thought. Xie Nanfeng's son is exceptionally talented. How could he be inferior to the child of a mere guard? Both were raised in my courtyard, and as in my previous life, I used my status as the legitimate granddaughter of the Grand Tutor to send them to the Egret Academy. Mr. Qi was a student of my grandfather and had received much care from him. He privately asked someone to inquire, since both are young masters, are there any particular preferences? This was essentially asking me which one to focus on cultivating. I recalled my past life, when I stayed up late with Xie Chengyi to help with his studies, patiently teaching him calligraphy stroke by stroke, and even using my dowry to help him make beneficial friends. In the end, all I got was his resentful remark, "You just want me to earn you a title of nobility. I'm not your own child, you never treated me as a human being." I smiled. There are no preferences, treat them equally. After all, a fool who cannot be helped will fall on his own, but those who have tasted the bitterness of life know to seize the opportunity when it comes. My mother-in-law has been going to the Hugua temple frequently to worship the Buddha lately, and every time she returns, she finds fault with me. Year is still young. Writing so many characters every day has worn out his hands. Could we reduce the amount a little? You're not getting enough sleep, and the child has lost weight. Even for the sake of fame and fortune, you shouldn't neglect his health. I knew that going to Hugua temple was just an excuse, but the real purpose was to reunite with her son and his family in the suburbs. It was only after Xie Chengyi hugged his mother and tearfully complained about how strict and indifferent I had been to him that Xie Nanfeng's resentment and Xie's mother's reproach were directed at me. I pretended not to know and nodded in agreement without hesitation. I will follow mother's wishes. With such a young child, I have never taught before, so I may not know the proper limits. Please do not blame me. Mother Xie softened her expression and also said that I had worked hard. Only after she turned and left, the former Meng Yuan, now Xie Jiyuan, stepped out from behind the screen. Why does mother assign extra lessons only to me, yet indulge him so freely? I lowered my gaze and smiled faintly. In that case, would you blame mother for being too strict with you? Jiyuan bowed with clasped hands. My mother has high hopes for me, so I must work twice as hard to live up to her expectations. I was quite satisfied. Xie Jiyuan was not as clever as Xie Chengyi, but he was diligent, willing to endure hardship, and always striving to improve. While Xie Chengyi feigned illness and his mother made trip after trip to reunite with their family at Hugua Temple, the slow bird that started flying early had gradually caught up with the dazzling talent. Knowing the road ahead is long and arduous, I must press on with even greater effort. You work hard, mother works hard, what you owe us cannot be escaped. It was already 3 years later when Mother Xie began to take notice of Xie Jiyuan. It was because he achieved the top grade in the teacher's examination. Meanwhile, Xie Chengyi, who was doted on by Mother Xie and spoiled beyond measure, only managed to get a middle grade score. She began to panic and questioned me. Although Nanfeng may not get along with you emotionally, you shouldn't take out your dissatisfaction with him on the child. Chengyi resembles Nanfeng, that should be considered a blessing, not a reason for you to favor one over the other. If I had known you despised him so much, why did you keep him in the mansion to suffer in the first place? The teacher's comments scattered all over the floor. I picked them up one by one and read through them. They were nothing more than criticisms of Xie Chengyi's lack of diligence in practicing calligraphy, his inattentiveness in reciting texts, and his distraction during lessons. Looking at Xie Chengyi, who was hiding behind his grandmother but had started to glare at me with hatred, I finally hardened my expression. It is mother who cannot bear to see Chengyi suffer and toil, taking advantage of his mother's affection. It was Xie Chengyi who went to worship Buddha every few days and refused to attend school. But in the end, all the blame fell on the daughter-in-law, if that's the case. Since mother cannot see the daughter-in-law's well-intentioned efforts, it would be better for her to raise him by her own side. Raising someone else's child was already exhausting enough, yet it ended up bringing nothing but trouble. Whoever is willing to take on this task can have it. As my children, why can Jiyuan achieve top grades while he only seeks comfort and avoids hard work, not even striving for a second-class grade? Is it that I favor one over the other? Or is it that he simply refuses to improve? Lady Xie was left speechless. Seeing how outstanding Xie Jiyuan had become under my care, she finally realized that her own doting had nearly ruined her grandson. She awkwardly promised not to take Xie Chengyi to Hugua Temple for frivolous play anymore, nor would she interfere with my teaching of his studies. A mother must keep her word. If you drop from second to third grade, the academy will expel you. By then, even if you try to find a good tutor, I'm afraid you'll be labeled as difficult to teach, making it even harder. I stepped back amidst Lady Xie's vows and promises, but just beyond the door, I heard Xie Chengyi crying, "Grandmother, mother said this woman won't truly care for me. You can't leave me in her hands." How could it be? In her eyes, you and that wild child are the same. She is well educated and reasonable. You won't go wrong learning from her. But Xie Chengyi wasn't wrong. I would never truly be good to him. If everyone repays evil with kindness, then what is left to repay kindness with? So that night, when he glared at me angrily, I sternly punished him by making him kneel, ignoring the hatred in his eyes. I sent the best pastries and the softest cotton-padded clothes to Xie Jiyuan's courtyard. Being young, he dared not voice his anger at my favoritism and deliberate provocations, so he could only grit his teeth and endure, waiting to complain about me to his mother the next day when paying respects. But I didn't give him the chance. Before dawn the next day, I pulled him out of bed to practice writing from memory. Having only gone to sleep at midnight after kneeling in punishment, he was now drowsy and irritable. His pent-up resentment had turned into a fierce temper, and he yelled at me, "You wicked woman, you're bullying me on purpose. When I grow up and inherit the marquisate, I'll make sure you die a miserable death." I don't know if I'll die a miserable death, but he was immediately slapped on the palm, locked in his room, and forbidden to eat. "You will not be released until you admit your mistake." The wailing cries drew the soft-hearted Lady Xie over. I stood steadily to the side, quietly listening as the nanny beside Xie Chengyi explained the reason to Lady Xie in detail. "Mother, do you realize that if such words, wishing the legal mother a miserable death, were to spread beyond the Marquis's mansion, what impact would it have on the Xie family's reputation and the future of Chengyi and Zai? If he were still young and ignorant, it might be excusable. But he is already past 7 years old and should have learned reason and proper conduct by now. In the Great Yu dynasty, where filial piety is held paramount, even a legitimate son who disrespects the matriarch would be disowned by the family, let alone one who speaks of killing and harming. He must be punished. This child has been spoiled rotten." "I'll listen to you." My mother-in-law was frightened and immediately hardened her heart. Finally, I could fully unleash my methods on him. Being a conscientious birth mother is difficult, but playing the wicked stepmother is quite easy. I've exhausted all the patience, sincerity, and effort from my previous life. In this life, I have no choice but to be ruthless. If you don't practice calligraphy with diligence, you will be punished. If you show me disrespect, you will be beaten. If you fail to complete your studies, you will be forced to stay up all night. He was constantly compared to his outstanding older brother, and under the constant criticism and belittlement, he grew increasingly averse to studying and more rebellious. I gave him everything, except love and patience. I even went so far as to be harsh and unfeeling. Don't blame me for being strict with you. Blame your own excessive playfulness, which caused you to miss the foundational learning in your early years. Now, the only way forward is to make up for it through relentless effort. Compared to the gentle care of his biological mother, his hatred for me reached an unprecedented level. Mother, he was crying at school, spreading the word that you mistreated him. After much hesitation, Xie Zai finally told me the reason why the noble women in the capital had suddenly begun to collectively distance themselves from me. Xie Chengyi could no longer hold on. And those who had been eyeing the Marquis's estate from behind him also couldn't resist revealing their true intentions. After seizing the old nanny by Xie Chengyi's side, I went straight to my mother-in-law's courtyard. Mother, please forgive me, but I truly cannot teach this child, Xie Chengyi, anymore. The Lu family has been a lineage of scholars for generations. Although we are not as prosperous as before, we still value our reputation. We absolutely cannot bear the disgrace of having an unvirtuous woman in the family. Only when the mother-in-law's teacup fell to the ground did the old woman stammer, Madam, the young master is just too afraid of being punished by his mother. He didn't mean it, he's still young and doesn't understand the seriousness of the situation. Please calm your anger. Madam, my mother-in-law was frustrated by my lack of ambition, yet she dared not show any emotion toward outsiders. She could only clutch her chest, breathing heavily. I added another blow. For the birthday banquet at the Zhenyuan General's manor, your daughter-in-law is incompetent and did not receive an invitation. Even respectable noble families now disdain associating with a woman like me, who brings disgrace to the family's reputation. But I no longer represent only myself. I am a daughter of the Lu family and the matriarch of the Xie household. My mother-in-law had not yet recovered from the shock when word came from my maternal family. The maid repeated the message carefully, word by word. The Lu family's daughter is well educated and refined. Even if she were to enter the imperial harem, she would hold a respectable position. How could the Xie family slander her and torment her so harshly with a mere adopted son? Not to mention the rumors that the Xie family's adopted son is actually Marquis Xie's illegitimate child. But the widespread gossip about the Lu family's daughter, where does that leave the Lu family's dignity and reputation? If this disgrace cannot be cleared, we should open the ancestral hall and part ways with dignity, lest in-laws turn into enemies. Of course, I deliberately spread the rumors, and I also intentionally allowed and even fueled Xie Chengyi's slander and defamation against me. The murkier the water, the more severe the situation, the more he and they would have no way to retreat. With the three-pronged approach, Xie's mother finally passed out, her eyes rolling back. I sat by the bedside, my expression cold. If it weren't for her indulgence of Xie Nanfeng's willfulness, and her fear that I would covet the Xie family's property after her death, how could she have pulled off this switcheroo, placing her own grandson by my side to drain me of my blood before kicking me aside? She clearly knew that woman never wanted Xie Nanfeng, but everything in my hands. Yet she allowed them to carve me up piece by piece, squeezing me dry until nothing remained. Everyone must pay the price for their actions, she must, and so must they. It took quite a while for my mother-in-law to recover with the maids bustling around her, but then she directly dragged Xie Chengyi back from school, forced him to kneel before me, and made him apologize. I glanced coldly. What use is an apology? Once my reputation is ruined, even if you kowtow until your head bleeds, it won't make any difference. To think that a mere apology would make me let bygones be bygones, you're taking the Lu family's dignity far too lightly. Now it's not just my reputation that's been damaged, but the Lu family's face as well. Even if I were willing to forgive, the Lu family's censors are formidable. How could they possibly let the Xie family off so easily? Mother-in-law finally realized, with my reminder, that offending the censors meant one had to keep a low profile even in ordinary times, for fear of being impeached, and since the Marquis's household no longer had anyone in court, if they were impeached, there would be no one to argue their case, leaving them to swallow their bitterness alone. So, what do you think should be done? I smiled gently. Xie Chengyi should bring generous gifts to personally apologize. In this way, Xie Chengyi's false accusation against the mistress and his harm to both the Lu and Xie families became indisputable facts. Even if he possessed extraordinary talent in the future, he would still carry the stain and infamy of being utterly unprincipled. The mother-in-law immediately objected. Absolutely not. This will ruin Ye's future. The future of the Xie family rests entirely on him. No matter what, we cannot let him destroy himself. I lifted my eyelids slightly. Then there is simply no solution. You can still leave room for maneuver even if you suffer heavy losses, but if you're completely uprooted, there will be no chance of recovery. You should carefully consider which is more important. Mother. Xie's mother's face turned extremely unpleasant, but I pretended not to see it. Her deep love for her son and her unwillingness to yield were already within my plans. Yet, there are things she cares about that can make her obediently lower her head. Upon returning to the courtyard, I immediately wrote a letter to my uncle. Only by watching out for and helping each other can we, the Liu family, have a future. The next day, in the imperial court, my uncle, who had understood the situation, hastily submitted a memorial directly accusing the Xie family of lax family discipline, allowing an illegitimate child into the household, slandering the mistress, spreading rumors, and causing trouble, thereby disgracing the Liu family. The entire court was in an uproar, but gradually some began to believe it. That child bears an 80% resemblance to Marquis Xie, and it's far too coincidental that he was found by the old madam. The Liu family is known for its strict discipline. Everyone is well educated and principled. There has never even been a rumor of them mistreating their servants, let alone their own children. Just look at the eldest son. He was once frail and couldn't even hold a brush, but now he carries himself with grace and is full of literary talent. If it weren't for the kindness of the main wife, how could he have been raised so well? The emperor was unwilling to interfere in the affairs of the inner household, and out of respect for Xie Nanfeng's sacrifice for the nation, he left some leeway for the Marquis's estate, even advising my uncle. Marquis Xie is an upright man and would never stoop to deceiving or humiliating his wife. As for that child, it is said he was merely found and taken in. Lord Liu, please calm your anger. Yet this single statement was interpreted in countless ways. I believe the child is not Marquis Xie's own. He wouldn't dare deceive the emperor so brazenly. His Majesty praised him for his integrity. If he truly had an illegitimate child, it would be a slap in the face to His Majesty and a crime of deceiving the sovereign. The Xie family would never dare, yet my uncle did not back down. Even if it's not an illegitimate child, the fact remains that he has tarnished the reputation of the lady of the house and dragged our Liu family through the mud. The storm from the imperial court had finally reached my mother-in-law's courtyard, to protect their own reputation. The Xie family pressed the elderly lady to reveal the true identity of Xie Chengyi. The crime of deceiving the emperor is a grave offense, and no matter how compelling the hidden circumstances, Lady Xie no longer dared to acknowledge Xie Chengyi's true identity. He is merely an orphan I picked up. Do not let rumors and gossip tarnish my son's reputation. Yet those people refuse to relent. He is not the Marquis's own son, and his character is so despicable. How can he be a candidate for the heir of the Marquis's household? It would be more reliable to select 2 candidates from the collateral branches. How could Lady Xie ever agree to let someone else take what was rightfully hers? Nonsense. We still have Jiyuan, don't we? That child has been raised quite well. In this way, she truly lost both her advantage and her standing. Not only had they offended the Liu family, but they had also ensured that Xie Nanfeng would never be able to acknowledge his own biological son, all while elevating Xie Jiyuan's status on the surface. Her mother-in-law swallowed her bitterness in silence, bowing her head with her ailing body. It's my fault for not listening to you sooner, which has now placed the Xie residents in the eye of the storm. Regretting it now is useless. I can only hope that mending the fold after the sheep have been lost is not too late. I will immediately prepare generous gifts and have Ye go to the Liu family to apologize. I obediently agreed, but as I stepped out the door, I couldn't help but grin. Xie Nanfeng's proud and highly anticipated son had so easily been tarnished with a bad reputation. He must be in great pain and sorrow. But besides this, his beloved Shuang'er is carrying another hope in her womb, yet I am determined to strip him of that hope and plunge them all into endless despair. Qingzhu, do me a favor. Qingzhu's eyes widened in shock. How could, miss, you? I gave a faint, light smile. So, if he is unkind, I will be unjust. Remember to be cautious and careful, and don't leave any evidence for others to find, Qingzhu said with great determination. Don't worry, miss. When Xie Chang'e brought lavish gifts to the Lu family to apologize, sudden exclamations erupted on the street. Isn't that the illegitimate son of the Xie family? He spread rumors everywhere to ruin the reputation of the matriarch, and now that he's about to be punished by the emperor, he's forced to go to the Lu family to apologize. TSK, what an ungrateful wretch. He only got into Egret Academy thanks to the matriarch using her grandfather's connections, and yet he shows no appreciation. Just look at his fine silks and satins, his fair complexion and rosy cheeks. Clearly he's been living a comfortable life. How could he possibly have been mistreated by the matriarch? That's right, so shameless. Who knows who the mother of this lowly brat is? Probably some shameless slut. The child is 4 years old, and the mistress has only been in the household for 3 years. Is he really Lord Xie's illegitimate child? Didn't you see how similar their features are? Even the birthmark on the back of his hand is the same. The midwife who delivered Lord Xie recognized it. How could it be wrong? Amidst the clamor of voices, Xie Chang'e's face turned deathly pale, his body trembling uncontrollably as he struggled to inch forward step by step, yet his eyes darted through the crowded throng, searching desperately. Meanwhile, his beloved mother, the one who had given him that reckless idea, now hid behind others, covering her mouth to hold back her tears. She dared not respond to her son's pleading gaze for help, even deliberately turning away to avoid him. Xie Chang'e's momentary joy instantly turned into overwhelming disappointment. He went to the Lu family in silence, obediently following his mother's instructions to bow and apologize, but his tightly clenched fists betrayed his feelings of humiliation and resentment. As for me, I deliberately stood behind his mother, sighing and lamenting. What a promising child. His future is about to be ruined, not to mention the heir of a marquis. Even a decent marriage is hard to come by. Having accomplished my mission, I turned and left, only to see the woman holding her huge belly, her face as pale as frost, drenched in cold sweat. Do you know what happened next, miss? She had a difficult labor. I flipped through the sketchbook and answered casually, that's her good fortune. The blood-activating ointment I had smeared all over my body was deliberately prepared for her. Under the candlelight, Xie Jiyuan paused his brush while writing, leaving an ink blot, which I noticed. Lady Xie, though still unwell, suddenly claimed she had dreamed of the marquis and insisted on leaving the estate overnight to offer incense for him. I knew she was eager to see her other beloved grandson, so I did not try to stop her. As the carriage departed, Xie Chang'e stood in the shadows beneath the corridor, his gaze cold and silent. I pretended not to notice. Mother is truly in such a hurry that she forgot my instructions. Ye is in need of comfort and care right now. Yet she left without a second thought. Ah! Qingzhu glanced at the person behind the pillar out of the corner of her eye and replied loudly. Naturally, there are matters more important than the second young master. We turned around with a smile and went back into the room. Only then did Qingzhu lower her voice. She brought a midwife and a doctor. I nodded. It's of no use. I wasn't lying. Xu Shuang'er, who had secretly glanced at her son, was supposed to wait at the tea house and return to the courtyard with Xie Nanfeng, who was out purchasing supplies, but she suddenly went into labor. And there was bleeding right there in the alley by the street. However, to avoid drawing attention, she hadn't brought her maid. Suddenly going into labor, she found herself with no one to turn to for help. By the time Xie Nanfeng found her, she was already lying in a pool of blood, on the verge of passing out. Although Xie's mother rushed over as quickly as possible, all she could deliver was a stillborn fetus. Along with the devastating news that Xu Shuang'er would likely struggle to conceive again. But Xu Shuang'er was going crazy, wanting to take her son back. No matter how much Lady Xie and Xie Nanfeng tried to persuade her to think it over carefully, she wouldn't listen to a single word. Just thinking about Xie Chang'e's pitiful expression of grievance and being condemned by everyone, my heart feels as if it's being pricked by needles. It was you who separated me from my son. It was you, Xie Nanfeng, who deceived me into having another child, saying it would make me happy. But no, I will never have another child. My Ye, please give him back to me, won't you? Xie Chang'e was her only child, yet he called the person she despised most mother. How could she not hate? Her hatred and resentment tormented Xie Nanfeng deeply. while Xie Nanfeng's despondency and disappointment in turn tore at his mother's heart. My son trusted you so completely that he placed his own flesh and blood in your hands. How could you let him fall to such a state? Mother has let her son down so much. Pressured by the Xie family and resented by her own son, she found herself in a difficult position, left with nothing but a bellyful of anger. Thus, upon returning home, Mother Xie seemed drained of all vitality, lying in bed with a vacant stare, yet Xie Chengyi grew to resent her. I resent her for constantly professing her love for me, yet abandoning him when he was at his most humiliated, suffering, and in need of comfort. Lady Xie kept insisting that her grandson attend to her in her illness, but Xie Chengyi's response was like a bucket of cold water. Grandmother, you're confused. I've already fallen far behind in my studies. How could I possibly waste time on such trivial matters? She was left speechless and deeply upset, closing her eyes tightly before waving him away. In the end, it was Xie Jiyuan, whom she had never taken seriously, who attended to her bedside. He was gentle, meticulous, and considerate. Even the nanny, who knew full well that he had no blood ties to the Xie family, couldn't help but praise his filial piety. A child born of a servant may not be inherently good, it's just that the Lu family has a fine upbringing, and Jingwan knows how to raise a child. Compared to Jingwan, that person, let's not even mention it. Lady Xie deeply regretted her moment of weakness in saving the daughter of her dear friend, who was a convicted official. She regretted even more bringing the girl back to the Xie family, for she had bewitched her fine son, who abandoned his noble title to live a secluded life with her, pledging eternal devotion. Fortunately, she had the wisdom to arrange the marriage with the Lu family daughter, who was originally betrothed to her late eldest son, in this vast Marquis estate. If she couldn't rely on the Lu daughter and the Lu family's support, who else could she turn to? As Lady Xie's health improved slightly, I suggested accompanying her to Hugua Temple to pray for blessings and to dispel her misfortunes. She was still concerned about the stillborn child and wanted to light a longevity lamp for him, so she agreed. Outside the main hall of Hugua Temple, after paying respects to countless Buddhas and feeling utterly exhausted, Lady Xie seemed to have a sudden pang of conscience and took my hand. Jingwan, I now believe in karma, but I never intended to harm you in any way. It must have been difficult for you to support the Marquis household all by yourself. I smiled faintly, serene and dignified. As a daughter-in-law of the Xie family, it is my duty to uphold the family's honor. Mother Xie's eyes glistened with emotion, visibly moved, but I sighed again and said, if only the Marquis could be like the valiant general merely wounded on the battlefield, losing his memory after a severe injury, wandering among the common folk, and eventually recovering fully to return to the manor. How wonderful that would be. Jing.Wn is deluding herself, always deceiving herself that although the person in the tomb was wearing the Marquis's clothes, his face was beyond recognition. Perhaps there's some hidden truth. Maybe one day the Marquis will suddenly return to the estate. By then, Jing.Wn wouldn't have to struggle alone to support the Marquis's household anymore, and Mother could finally be reunited with her son. Lady Xie's face turned pale, her hands gripping the nanny's arms so tightly that veins bulged, but she quickly retreated to her side room, using physical exhaustion as an excuse. Once the door was closed, she began to gasp heavily, her expression agitated. She is right. Nanfeng still has a way out. As long as he abandons the daughter of the disgraced official, everything in the Marquis's estate and his son will remain his. The nanny drew a sharp breath. But how could he let go? Lady Xie's face turned icy cold, her voice carrying a chill. She has already caused enough trouble for the Marquis household. If it weren't for the wicked ideas she put into Ye's head, how could she have driven such a wedge between mother and child? If you behave, you can be a well-kept mistress. If you cause trouble, don't blame me for being ruthless. I stood outside the Arhat hall, looking down from above, and coldly watched Xu Shuang'er, her head wrapped in bandages, standing outside Lady Xie's room, trembling like a sieve. The Xie family's heartlessness shouldn't be known and endured by me alone. Xu Shuang'er, don't let me down. Qingzhu, I think winter is almost over. Miss, it's still snowing. A timely snow promises a good harvest. Next year should bring a bountiful yield. Lady Xie seldom went out anymore, only adding more guards to accompany Xie Qingyi to prevent him from wandering off. She kept him close to me, making him study and practice calligraphy. My strictness towards him gradually began to show results. The teacher's comments, which were once full of reprimands, have now progressed to considerable improvement. I then ceased being strict and raised his treatment to the same level as Xie Jiyuan's. They studied and practiced calligraphy together in my courtyard, accompanied me for meals and flower appreciation, and followed me on visits to noble families, presenting a picture of peaceful times and harmonious mother-child relationships, until Lady Xie took Xie Jiyuan to the guardian temple again, and upon their return, he changed once more. He became taciturn and often lost in thought. I saw it with my own eyes, and Lady Xie was deeply worried. It wasn't until Xie Jiyuan told me that before going to bed, Xie Qingyi had asked him whether the debt to one's birth parents or the debt to one's adoptive parents is greater. I asked with a smile, "How did you respond?" My son said, "The grace of upbringing is greater than heaven." Xie Qingyi probably took it to heart, so he went out to buy some paper and pens, and came back with a handprint on his cheek. My own son sincerely acknowledged me as his mother, while Xu Shuang'er, who had given me a slow-acting poison in my previous life and allowed Xie Qingyi to torment me slowly until my last breath, has now broken down. Not only did she strike her own son, but even Xie Nanfeng, with whom she had shared unparalleled affection, was punished and resented by her. She forbade him from sharing a bed with her, from eating at the same table, and even from leaving the residence to see his own mother and son. What are you trying to do? Are you abandoning me? Or are you saying you've fallen in love with that woman? Don't think I don't know. Your mother dotes on her so much. She's practically hoping you two will live in perfect harmony and grow old together. Xie Nanfeng wanted to explain, but she hysterically covered her ears and screamed, "I won't listen, I won't listen. I won't believe a single word of your insincere lies. But if you dare take one step out that door today, I'll kill myself right before your eyes." Xie Nanfeng had initially dismissed his mother's advice as utter nonsense, but gradually, he found himself swayed. Everyone in the Marquis household treated him as if he were above the heavens. All were reverent and obeyed his every word. Who else would torment him the way Xu Shuang'er did, especially under the increasingly frantic and harsh daily screams and pressures from the maddened Xu Shuang'er? His love, his pity, his heartache were gradually replaced by disgust and exhaustion. 3 generations in one room, hiding in the tea room that was part of Lady Xie's dowry, pouring out their longing for each other. Xie Qingyi's eyes were filled with tears. "Mother wants me to poison my stepmother and run away with her. She said since I was born from her, I should be of one heart with her, but I don't dare. Grandmother once told me that my stepmother's strictness toward me is for my own good. My elder brother also taught me that no evil is too small to avoid." Xie Nanfeng patted his son's head, feeling quite satisfied. "Your mother has raised you well. The Marquis household cannot do without her at the moment, otherwise no one will have an easy life. If Ye proves capable and secures the position of heir to the Marquis household, a mere woman in the inner courtyard is nothing. Crushing her would be as easy as crushing an ant. Your mother was too impatient. You shouldn't listen to her." While the 3 were sharing their tender moment, I emerged from downstairs with a bashful expression, then covered my face with a handkerchief and hurried into the carriage to return home, looking as if I had just stolen a secret meeting and was filled with shyness and anticipation. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Lady Xie emerged with Xie Qingyi, while Xie Nanfeng, disguised as a porter, slipped out through the back door. Yet all of this was witnessed by Xu Shuang'er. "So you've already reunited as a family. Do you think I'm easy to bully and deceive? You want to step over my flesh and blood to have a family reunion? You don't have that kind of luck." She was about to make her move. "Perfect. Since you're seeking death, I can only oblige. Egret Academy is sending several people to Chilu Academy for a 6-month observation program. Xie Qingyi and Xie Jiyuan's names were both on the selected list, Madam. The eldest young master truly has genuine talent and learning. That's understandable, but the second young master really puts this old man in a difficult position." I waved my hand and presented a 100-year-old ginseng. "My mother is seriously ill, and I haven't had the chance to pay you a visit. This is truly impolite. This small token is but a humble expression of my respect." As for the study tour, I believe that traveling 10,000 miles is better than reading 10,000 books. This journey will surely benefit the second young master. What do you think, sir? The gentleman said nothing more, bowed, and withdrew. After the gentleman had left, Xie Chengyi and Xie Jiyuan both emerged from behind the screen. Xie Chengyi bowed to me respectfully. Mother has put so much thought and effort into my upbringing, and I will always remember it in my heart. I will study diligently to repay your kindness. I smiled gently. I dare not expect any repayment from you. It would be enough if I don't end up being resented. Taking someone's flesh and blood, separating mother and child, is a matter of life and death. So Xu Shuang'er, who was cornered and desperate, and unable to persuade Lady Xie or Xie Nanfeng, cornered me in the sedan chair with a hairpin. So it was you were the one who provoked me behind my back that day. How vicious you are, Miss Lu. Seeing her sallow complexion and sunken eyes, I knew she was not doing well. And that made me much happier. You've addressed me incorrectly. I am now the lawful wife of Lord Xie, so you should call me Lady Xie. The hairpin pierced my flesh, and I felt a twinge of pain, but I knew that compared to the ache in her heart, this was truly nothing. So it turns out, you've always looked down on me. Even now that you've become a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in my hands, you still refuse to look me in the eye. But what does it matter if you're arrogant? You don't realize that your husband is still under my control, and even your son was born by me. If I kill you today, everything in the Marquis's estate will still be mine. I was deeply puzzled and voiced the confusion of 2 lifetimes. What deep-seated hatred do you hold against me? Must we fight to the death? You don't resent those who ransacked your home and annihilated your clan, yet you harbor such deep hatred only for me. She suddenly leaned in close, her eyes bloodshot. You actually don't know why, because you've always looked down on me, and even tried to take everything from me. It was me who shared a deep affection and secretly pledged my life to Nanfeng. Yet he insists on marrying you as his official wife. I can accept being a concubine. But how dare you humiliate me even before you've stepped through the door? I was even more confused. When have I ever humiliated you? She gripped my chin harshly, forcing me to meet her gaze. The first time you entered the Marquis residence to admire the flowers, you were surrounded by a crowd of noble ladies in the very center. I merely stole a glance from afar, yet the old matron by your side actually ordered me to serve you tea and water. Clearly, I am no less than you. Why must you take my beloved and then humiliate me like this? Lady Xie told me to remember my place. But why? You are merely luckier than I. Having escaped the downfall of your family, why should I be considered beneath you? So, it was all Lady Xie's doing, to make her back off without hurting their mother-son bond. He used me as a weapon. My gaze darkened as I grabbed her hand that was exerting force on me. Do you really think it's because I look down on you that you've become so vengeful and scheming? Clearly, it's you who, despite living under someone else's roof, shows no gratitude and magnifies every slight discomfort from others 1,000-fold, as if the whole world owes you. You are sensitive, suspicious, and incredibly arrogant. I am merely your living target for your unwillingness to accept fate. Do you love Xie Nanfeng? He is nothing but your lifeline. Do you love your son? He is nothing but your weapon in the struggle for power and gain. A selfish person like you doesn't deserve anyone's love, nor should you have it. She couldn't bear to have her outer layer stripped away, revealing her true self before the person she detested most. She went mad, trying to kill me with a single hairpin, but Qingzhu, who was guarding outside, kicked her away. Do you think the madam's sedan chair is so easy to get into? Realizing she had fallen into a trap, Xu Shuang'er got up and ran. Qingzhu moved to chase her, but I stopped her. Let her go. She looked at me, puzzled, until she saw me pull out my hairpin and deepen the wound on my neck. Then, she understood, using another's hand to kill. Madam is brilliant. Only when I lay trembling in bed, weakened by excessive fear, did Mother Xie hold my hand and promise, no matter who it is, if they dare to lay a hand on my Marquis's wife, I will make sure they regret it. Xie Qingyi's face was ashen, and he returned to his courtyard, utterly distraught. If he hadn't lured the person away, how could his mother have seized the opportunity to enter my sedan chair? Some people can never be tamed, no matter how hard you try. Fortunately, since my rebirth, I have never held any expectations or genuine feelings for him. so there is no room for disappointment. Mother, does it hurt? There must be a way. You shouldn't harm your own body. I am ashamed that I can't be of any help. Xie Jiyuan's concern caught my eye. How could you say you haven't helped, if it weren't for you? How could Xu Shuang'er have bled so heavily that she could never bear children again? Xie Jiyuan instantly turned as pale as paper and knelt by my bedside. Mother, please punish me. I helped him up and said gently, why did Mother punish you? You protected Mother so fiercely that you would strike without even asking for reasons. Such devotion has moved me deeply. But remember this well, I am raising you to have grander ambitions. The filthy affairs within these mansion walls are not worthy of soiling the hands of the future Marquis. Xie Jiyuan's eyes swirled with emotions I couldn't comprehend. After choking back tears for a long moment, he finally kowtowed to me with red-rimmed eyes. Mother's teachings, your son will engrave in his heart. But Mother, you have me go to Father's grave every few days to stay for a while. Yet you and Father did not share such deep affection. So why is this? Son suspects. The person in that grave is my father, isn't it? My hand holding the teacup trembled, spilling hot liquid all over my hand. Jiyuan, you are clever, and very observant. You guessed correctly, that is your father. Was my father killed by the Marquis? I shook my head. I truly do not know. He nodded. Whether it is true or not, a son and his mother will always stand together. My son, I have never worried that he would be any less than anyone else. In fact, he will surpass everyone in the Xie family. Our blessings are yet to come. Lady Xie went for another tea session and returned to the mansion with a very unpleasant expression. That person has been confined to the estate in the suburbs, and Marquis, that man was severely scolded. Once the two young masters have gone to Chilu Academy, he will take the opportunity to return to the capital with the governor's entourage. I smiled faintly. He won't get the chance. When he chose to abandon all his empty titles back then, it was destined that there would be no turning back for him. While I was hosting a banquet at a tavern for the two young masters of the estate, inviting their close relatives and friends to bid them farewell, a deranged woman suddenly rushed to the tavern entrance, holding a dagger, and pulled Xie Qingyi into her embrace. My son, have you abandoned your mother? How could you listen to her, refusing to see me or acknowledge me? I am the one who gave birth to you. Xie Qingyi, his face pale, watched as the astonished gazes of everyone fell upon him one by one, and he was so ashamed he wished he could die on the spot. What his mother had told him was simply to beg his mother at the farewell place to grant her any status at all, so she could stay by his side, but she wanted the title of wife. Mother, he had just called out to me when Xu Shuang'er went mad, gripping his shoulders tightly. Not even noticing the blood seeping from the wound. You are not allowed to call her. She is a wicked woman. She is the one who harmed Mother like this. That day when you went to the Lu family to apologize, it was her whispering nonsense behind my back that suddenly made me lose my temper. It was also her who instructed a group of children to block the view at the alley entrance, and she mocked your many faults, causing me to bleed uncontrollably in my agitation. That's how I lost your brother and the chance to ever conceive again. You must hate her just like Mother does. Hate her forever. I deliberately feigned virtue and anxiously stepped forward to persuade her gently. Miss, please calm down. Let's talk this through properly. Just don't harm my child. She suddenly turned around and glared at me fiercely, roaring, don't pretend to be kind. If you hadn't stolen my marriage, Nanfeng wouldn't have had to fake his death with me and retreat to a pastoral life while I was heavily pregnant. It's you who couldn't tolerate me. It's you who wanted to take everything. You are the most malicious woman. Now why pretend to be kind to my son? He is Nanfeng's son. Everything in the Marquis's estate should have been his, and should have been mine. It's you. You stole everything from me. All of you. Look at this woman, hypocritical and sanctimonious to the extreme. She has taken my son and now wants to kill me. If I die, it will be by her hand. My son, look at her. She is our enemy. Xie Qingyi could no longer stand steady, swaying as if about to collapse, but Xu Shuang'er held him tightly. Her gentle words were just like a mother soothing a baby. Speak up. Tell them you are the only man of the Marquis's household. They can't do anything to you. Bring me back, and I will be the lady of the Marquis's household. I will also be like her, teaching you to read and be a good person, giving you fine clothes and delicious food, Tell me, my baby, speak up for your mother. Xie Qingyi stammered and trembled, but just couldn't bring himself to speak. She was about to go mad, raising the dagger and shouting loudly, "Did she teach you to hate and resent me? Did she want your father to lock me up and poison me? Speak, tell me." "Shut up." Lady Xie arrived upon hearing the news, and with a single glance, a swarm of guards swarmed in, before anyone could react. Xu Shuang'er was instantly subdued. The madwoman, with her mouth covered, was viciously dragged away amidst Xie Qingyi's bewilderment, a lunatic with some past grievances against the Xie family. My apologies for the unsightly scene, but Lady Xie's words were utterly unconvincing. Everyone knew the truth in their hearts, and they only bid their farewells perfunctorily. If her words are true, then the dowager and the marquis's household have committed the crime of deceiving the sovereign. When this charge is laid, the dowager should remember that our Xie clan knew not a single word of it. We only beg the dowager to show mercy and not implicate the innocent. Farewell." The dowager had already lost all color from her face. If not for forcing herself to hold on, she would have collapsed on the spot. Hidden behind the crowd, Xie Nanfeng, his face completely obscured by his hat brim, clenched his fists tightly, his heart filled with hatred. His beloved Shuang'er had made it impossible for him to ever return to the mansion, for the sake of reputation, to avoid the crime of deceiving the emperor. Even a marquis must know when to let go. Such is the heartlessness of noble families. Lady Xie, overwhelmed with anxiety and anger, fell gravely ill upon returning home. The physician said that with careful nursing, she might last another year or so. Xie Qingyi stood beside Xie Jiyuan, unable to lift his head, and asked in a tearful voice, "Because of me, the Marquis Manor's reputation has been ruined. Everyone must hate me to death by now." Xie Jiyuan, however, patted his shoulder with a laugh. "How could that be? I would not blame you. Matters of adults have nothing to do with you. If you could choose, you would probably want to choose mother as your mother too. Alas, now that person has publicly torn apart the dignity of the Marquis household. I'm afraid, from now on, your only mother will be mother." Xie Qingyi suddenly lifted his head, his face full of disbelief. Is she going to die? He turned around and rushed out of the mansion like a madman. The servants tried to stop him, but with one cold glance from Xie Jiyuan, everyone halted their movements. Xie Qingyi rushed into the courtyard in the suburbs, where his mother, whom he both loved and hated, was hanging in the middle of the yard, her face covered in bloody marks. No. He threw himself forward without a second thought, pushing aside all the servants, and carefully lowered his mother down. Mother, what happened to you? I'm sorry, it's all my fault, but I really don't know what to do. I truly don't know." Xie Nanfeng stood coldly to the side. "You shouldn't have come. She ruined your life. She doesn't deserve you pleading for her." Xie Qingyi shook his head like a rattledrum. "No, that's not right. She is my mother, and she loves me the most. I should listen to her. I should." Xie Nanfeng grew furious upon hearing this and kicked Xie Qingyi to the ground. "It's because you listened to her too much that you ruined your future and ruined me. Do you have any idea how meticulously I have planned for your future, for our future? As long as you secure the heir position, the life or death of the women in the Marquis household is but a word from you. Why must you be so shallow, insisting on competing for superiority at this moment? Haven't I given you enough?" Xu Shuang'er, seeing her beloved son being struck, cried and screamed as she held him tightly in her arms, glaring angrily at Xie Nanfeng. "If you had fulfilled all your promises, why would I need to compete with her? In the end, you are selfish and irresponsible. You've dragged me down, and you've dragged down the Marquis household as well. Everything that has happened now is your own fault. You deserve it." Xie Nanfeng, overwhelmed with rage, began to violently attack Xu Shuang'er, not stopping even when she was spitting blood. Xie Qingyi, who had failed to protect his mother and lost everything, also went mad. He drew the short dagger gifted by his elder brother from his waist and stabbed Xie Nanfeng from behind. The blade, sharp enough to slice through iron, instantly pierced through flesh. He stood frozen in place at the sight of blood, while Xie Nanfeng, clutching the stab wound that went straight through him, looked back at Xie Qingyi with a mix of shock and heartbreak. Before he could utter a word, he spat out a mouthful of blood, collapsed to the ground, and died. The servants rushed in screaming, and in a panic, They tied up Shushwanga and her son and brought them to the Marquis's residence. I suppose mother also intends to have Shushwanga take the blame for your grandson, right? After all, in the eyes of the world, no one's life is as important as the bloodline of your Xie family. And the Marquis had long since died in linen. The one in the outskirts was just a servant of the Xie family. Right, old lady Xie's fingers twitched, but she couldn't open her eyes. Let the nanny personally hand Shushwanga over to the authorities. The daughter of a convicted official could never step into the government office. The nanny understands the old lady's intentions best and will surely make sure Shushwanga never speaks again, after the nanny left to carry out her orders. I tucked Mother Xie's quilt in for her. How strange, although the Marquis and I never actually confronted each other directly, now that he's dead, I feel a sense of relief, as if I've thoroughly avenged myself and won completely. Mother must have been utterly bewildered until the very end, wondering how Shushwanga, who was locked away in the backyard, managed to collude with Xie Chengyi to put on this whole act. Right, of course, I was the one who let the person out. I even arranged the meeting between Xie Chengyi and her. That was the last chance I gave Xie Chengyi. If only he could have remembered my kindness and not colluded with his mother, there would always have been a place for him in the Marquis household. But in the end, he sided with his mother. Not only did he tell her the location of the tavern, but he also slipped a sleeping drug into my wine cup at her instigation. Unfortunately, it was you, mother, who ended up drinking it, and it was his own escape route that was cut off. The bond between mother and son is severed. Do not blame me for being heartless. As for Xie Nanfeng, he truly deserved to die. He craved wealth and luxury but refused to shoulder the responsibilities of the Marquis estate, forcing a weak woman like me to carry the banner of the Marquis household and serve his lavish lifestyle. In the end, unable to bear the thought of the estate falling into others' hands after his death, he even pushed his own son into the Marquis estate to become my legitimate heir. You probably don't know this, but in my dream, this legitimate son eventually became the Marquis. And together with his mother and Xie Nanfeng, they killed me. In this lifetime, I've come to claim lives. Xie's mother gasped for breath, clutching the bedsheet tightly, but I paid no attention, watching coldly as she struggled until she soon breathed her last. The old lady was angered to death by the second young master. My cries echoed beyond the courtyard, and Shushwanga finally showed a look of terror, but she had already been forced into the prison cart. Upon hearing this, Xie Chengyi slumped to the ground, muttering to himself. He had lost everything. He had his grandmother to protect him, a father who schemed for him, a mother who loved him, and a stepmother who raised him. I was the one who lifted him to the clouds, just one step away from the air position. And I was also the one who ruthlessly stripped him of everything, sending him crashing into the bottomless abyss. I've said it before, I've never been one to return good for evil. Even if the grudges from a past life seem too illusory, the fact that in this life, he and his mother have repeatedly conspired against me is an undeniable truth. Taking a child's life is too cruel, but it is easy to cut off all his hopes and destroy the future he has been longing for. As I expected, Xie Chengyi became the laughingstock of the capital, unable to hold his head up under the shadow of Xie Zai's brilliance. Chengyi, don't pay attention to those rumors. A man's ambition should reach far and wide. The prejudices in the capital do not represent the prejudices of the world. There will always be a place for you, my brother, to showcase your abilities. Xie Chengyi heeded the advice and, one late night, entered the military camp alone, and then there was no news of him. It wasn't until the second year of Xie Jiyuan becoming the Marquis that news of the second young master's death arrived. His death, unexpectedly, earned me a noble title. By that time, I had already become the true and undisputed dowager of the Marquis household. Xie Jiyuan respected and loved me deeply, following my every word. Everyone envies me for my good luck and abundant blessings. I smiled faintly. Behind any stroke of good fortune, there are always traces of deliberate effort. The end dash. And so the first story ends. What do you all think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, please give this video a like. Now, here's the second story. I adopted a low-born illegitimate child and painstakingly raised him to adulthood. To accompany him in his studies, I ruined my own eyes. To treat his illness, I exhausted my own body. As I lay bedridden, He held the hand of a woman of ill repute and stood by my bedside, coldly saying, "Once she dies of illness, everything in the Marquis's estate will be ours." I died with bitter resentment, only to be reborn back to the day I adopted him, this time. Ignoring his hopeful gaze, I chose the boy beside him. He knelt in the rain, unwilling to accept it, and asked me, "Mother, why don't you want me?" When I opened my eyes, a row of half-grown boys stood before me. The steward said eagerly beside me, "These are either the children of the Marquis and his concubines, or the orphaned children of several deceased uncles in the household. The Marquis's intention is for you, madam, to choose one to raise under your care." The Marquis the steward referred to was Jiang Feng, the Marquis of Yongning. I come from an extremely noble background. My father is the General of Zhenyuan, and my mother is the Grand Princess. Marrying someone like Jiang Feng, who only holds a hereditary title of Marquis, was truly a step down for me. Not to mention, Jiang Feng already had children with several concubines before I even entered his household. But as a woman, I have an undeniable weakness. I have been frail since childhood and cannot bear children. Therefore, marrying Jiang Feng wasn't all that bad, since he already had children with his concubines, and I was unable to bear children yet loved them dearly. Jiang Feng suggested that I adopt a child to raise as my own, making him the legitimate heir of the Marquis household. This was an excellent opportunity. This child would rise from being a lowly illegitimate son to becoming a relative of the imperial family. "Madam, the Marquis says that Rongjia is quite suitable. He is clever, obedient, and exceptionally well behaved." I looked at the boy before me. He had a fair and handsome face, and when he smiled, a pair of dimples appeared, making him truly endearing. But I couldn't help shivering. In my previous life, the one I adopted was Jiang Rong. To help him succeed in the imperial examinations, I stayed up with him every night studying, burning the midnight oil until my eyes were nearly ruined. He was born with a weak constitution, so I took him everywhere seeking medical treatment. Eventually, his health improved greatly, but I fell seriously ill from exhaustion. While I was bedridden with illness, what did Jiang Rong do? Already successful and renowned, he held the hand of a woman of ill repute and came to my bedside. Looking at me with deep disgust, he told me that the person he hated most in this life was me. "Because of you, my birth mother and I were forced to part. When I was by your side, you constantly pushed me to improve and work hard. I never had a single day of carefree happiness. Yumai and I are deeply in love, and she is even carrying my child. When I brought her to your home, you had her driven away, cruelly tearing us apart." The famous courtesan named Yumai nestled in Jiang Rong's embrace, weeping like a pear blossom bathed in rain. Jiang Rong gently stroked her hair. "You don't need to worry anymore. That wicked woman won't live much longer. When she dies, everything in the Marquis's household will be ours. You will be the mistress, and everything will be under your control." With that, Jiang Rong left in a huff with Li Niang. Before stepping out, Yumai turned back and gave me a triumphant smile. I couldn't catch my breath, and just like that, I died on the bed. The past is still vivid before my eyes. Having been reborn into this life, I will never raise another ungrateful wretch. So, my gaze swept indifferently over Jiang Rong before I pointed to a young man in the corner. "You, lift your head and let me have a look." The young man raised his head, then lowered it again. He had eyes like a young wolf's, stubborn yet clear. I recognized him. His name was Jiang Chen, an orphan who had always been the wild child of the Marquis household. In my previous life, he was the notorious troublemaker in the school, and Jiang Rong had clashed with him several times. Back then, I always sided with Jiang Rong, blaming Jiang Chen for being uncouth and rude, but he never defended himself, just kept his head bowed like he was doing now. What happened to him later? It seems he joined the army in the northern desert. Even during the days when I was ill, everyone in the mansion was ordered by Jiang Rong not to visit me. Yet he rushed back from the northern desert military camp and even brought me a tonic for my health. Thinking of this, my heart stirred, and I pointed at Jiang Chen. "Come here. From today on, you are my child, understand?" Before the words had even finished, Jiang Chen's expression shifted slightly. While Jiang Rong's face instantly turned deathly pale, he stared at me blankly. "Mother, why didn't you choose me?" Seeing that I ignored him, Jiang Rong stepped forward and grabbed the hem of my skirt. Mother, you should have chosen me. How dare you? The steward stepped forward at once, pulling Jiang Rong's grubby hand away from my skirt. Keep your filthy hands off the lady's dress. The lives of these illegitimate children were far from easy. Their mothers often came from extremely humble backgrounds, and Jiang Feng was a father who only sired children but never cared for them. Thus, in the manner anyone felt entitled to look down on them, even the steward dared to scold Jiang Rong harshly. In my previous life, this would have been absolutely impossible. Ever since I chose Jiang Rong, the butler would greet him with a beaming smile and address him as young master, never daring to show the slightest disrespect. At this moment, I leisurely adjusted the hair at my temples, ignoring Jiang Rong's pleading gaze, and said calmly, Chen Jia has lost both parents and has no one to rely on. While your mother is still alive, how could I bear to take away what is dear to you and separate you from your mother? Jiang Rong's mother, Auntie Zhao, used to sing drum songs in an opera house. Back then, she was brought back by Jiang Feng while heavily pregnant, and everyone in the mansion mocked her for being unfit for a respectable setting. Nowadays, Jiang Feng's favor has long been given to his younger and more beautiful concubine. Aunt Zhao and Jiang Rong live in a remote small courtyard, leading a very miserable life. After hearing what I said, Jiang Rong's face turned pale. A moment later, he fell to his knees with a thud at my feet. Madam is my legal mother. Please give Ronger a chance to be filial to you. Filial piety. I sneered inwardly. Is it about flaunting the courtesan in front of me, or about not allowing any servant to bring water or medicine to me on my sickbed? My dear Rong. The story of the scholar and the wolf only needs to be acted out once. Jiang Rong crawled on his knees to me. My studies are the best among everyone. The teacher said I will surely pass the imperial examination in the future. Mother, please don't abandon me. The other children were already displeased. They pulled Jiang Rong aside, and fists and kicks began to rain down on him. You want to compete for favor? Fine. But why step on us to do it, just because your studies are a bit better? Do you think you're so great? If we don't teach you a lesson, you'll really start thinking you're the legitimate son of the Marquis's household. I ignored Jiang Rong's sobbing pleas from the crowd and instead beckoned to Jiang Chen nearby. Come closer, let me have a look. This dress is completely worn out. I still have 3 bolts of fine fabric that I brought from my mother's house. I'll make you some new clothes. At that moment, I saw Jiang Rong raise his head, glaring at Jiang Chen with intense jealousy in his eyes. In my previous life, I naturally gave all 3 bolts of fabric to Jiang Rong. He was overjoyed and thanked me sweetly. Mother treats me so well, it would be even better if paired with a pair of fashionable boots. I was generous and immediately bought fine jade, specifically to make the soles of his boots. However, now that the same fine material was worn by Jiang Chen, he seemed sullen and didn't even utter a word of thanks. What's wrong? Does it not fit? I went to measure his waist, but he avoided me, his face slightly flushed. The material you used, madam, is of the highest quality, but I am unworthy of it, he said in a low voice. I often get into fights outside, and even the finest clothes would be torn within a couple of days. Wasting your kindness for nothing. With that, Jiang Chen started to take off his clothes. I stopped him. Hey, what are you taking off? His face turned even redder, the pale skin flushing with a hint of pink, making the tough-looking boy appear somewhat endearing. Since you know fighting is bad, then don't do it. The academy is a place for studying. Why are you always picking fights with others? He lowered his head and muttered, I don't know many characters. I can't keep up with what the teacher is teaching. It's all right, I'll teach you. Jiang Chen turned to look at me, a trace of disbelief in his eyes. I'll teach you, I repeated solemnly. But on one condition, you mustn't fight with others anymore. Understand? Jiang Chen hesitated for a moment, but then, he nodded firmly. I promise, madam. Teaching Jiang Chen to read was actually quite simple. He was much smarter than I had imagined. He had just lacked someone to guide him before. I started teaching him in the afternoon, and after each evening meal, I would continue the lessons for a while. But Jiang Chen would refuse to study any further. I thought he was impatient and couldn't sit still, so I didn't push him and went back to my room early to rest. However, one night when I got up, I discovered Jiang Chen had relit the candle and was leaning over the windowsill, reviewing his lessons. The old housekeeper told me, every time you leave, madam, young Master Chen gets up again to study diligently. I was a bit surprised. He never says these things to me. The old butler smiled. Young Master Chen said that madam's health is not good, and she shouldn't be kept up late. My heart stirred, and a warm current slowly surged within me. The next day, after Jiang Chen returned from school, I wanted to call him over and ask if he could keep up with the lessons the teacher had been teaching recently, but I just couldn't find Jiang Chen anywhere. It was then that I remembered Jiang Chen had been avoiding me these past few days. Whenever I went to check on him, he would only respond to me through the door. It seemed like he was hiding from me, so I took him by surprise and went straight into his room. I caught Jiang Chen red-handed, a flicker of panic flashing in his clear eyes as his first instinct was to turn his head away. But I was sharp-eyed and had already noticed the bruised, purplish mark on his left cheek that he was trying to hide. What happened? I asked anxiously, stepping forward to cup his face. Did you get into another fight? Jiang Chen lowered his gaze, his eyelashes trembling slightly. After a long while, his throat moved, and he let out a low I was furious. Didn't you promise me you wouldn't fight anymore? Jiang Chen lowered his head, his gaze dark and obscure. I was wrong. Please punish me, my lady. I was exasperated. If you keep this up, I won't care about you anymore. I turned to rush out the door, but after a few steps, I suddenly realized something was wrong. I turned back and stood before Jiang Chen, speaking in a low voice. Jiang Chen, tell me the truth. Jiang Chen's eyes flickered, then he lowered his head. This is the truth. No, it's not. I shook my head. With your abilities, no one could have beaten you like this. In my previous life, I had witnessed Jiang Chen's skills firsthand. When Jiang Rong and his gang ganged up on him, he actually managed to fight 1 against 10. The flowing cloud whip technique he learned from the old soldiers in the mansion was executed with such effortless grace that no one could get close to him. There's only one possibility for you to be injured like this, I said, staring firmly at Jiang Chen. Someone hit you, and you didn't fight back at all. I held his face, forcing him to lift his head. Only when Jiang Chen looked directly at me did I suddenly realize that his eyes were already red. I promised my wife I wouldn't fight. His voice sounded a bit hoarse. My heart jolted. To keep this promise, Jiang Chen didn't fight back at all when others hit him. Who hit you? I said coldly. Jiang Chen remained silent. Why didn't you tell me? I am your mother. Jiang Chen suddenly shouted. No, you're not. His shout made my head ache, and I swayed unsteadily. Jiang Chen panicked and quickly reached out to support me. Madam, his touch felt like a bolt of lightning piercing through my mind. The one who hit you was Rong, right? I said coldly. The next day, I sent Jiang Chen to the medical clinic, while I went to the school myself. As soon as Jiang Rong saw me, he immediately ran over, his face full of delight. Madam is here. Would you like some water? Madam, I'll go pour some for you. With a calm expression, I said lightly. Have you been fighting recently? Jiang Rong was taken aback, the smile on his face fading slightly, but he must have prepared his excuse in advance, immediately speaking up clearly. Jiang Chen cheated during the exam. His conduct is improper and has brought shame to our Marquis manor. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I took some people to teach him a lesson. I raised an eyebrow. Did you see him cheat with your own eyes? Jiang Rong declared confidently. Of course, if you don't believe me, madam, you can ask the master. I didn't say a word and turned to leave. Jiang Rong thought he had convinced me and called out from behind. After madam confirms with the master. Shouldn't you reward Ronger? A cold smile flickered at the corner of my lips as I murmured softly. Naturally, just as Jiang Rong had said, I went to the teacher at the school. The white-bearded old scholar said righteously. Jiang Chen did indeed try to peek at others during the exam. I smiled and interrupted him. How much silver did Rong Ji give you? The teacher was stunned, his mouth agape but speechless. In my past life, all the servants around me spoke highly of Jiang Rong, making me truly believe he was a young man of pure character. I later found out that all the servants had accepted Jiang Rong's silver and were thoroughly taken care of by him. I took off the gold bracelet from my wrist and slapped it on the table. Teaching and nurturing students must be quite demanding. This is just a small token of my appreciation, though it hardly does justice to your efforts. The teacher picked up the bracelet, weighed it in his hand, and beamed with delight. "Madam, you are truly generous. If there is anything you need, please feel free to tell me." I smiled and said, "I don't have any special requests. I just want to know the real situation at the school." He emphasized the word real, and this white-bearded old man was no fool. How could he not understand? He accepted the bracelet and admitted frankly, "Jiang Chen did glance at others during the exam, but only briefly, likely just to check their progress. He never stared for long." In other words, Jiang Chen did not cheat. His improvement was genuinely earned through hard work. Yet Jiang Rong's writing style has recently undergone a sudden transformation, improving so remarkably it's almost unbelievable. An ominous premonition inexplicably rose in my heart. "May I take a look at Jiang Rong's exam paper?" The teacher brought over Jiang Rong's paper. I glanced at it and felt a chill run through my entire body. Jiang Rong's essay is exactly the same as one written by a scholar surnamed Su in his previous life. But the problem is, according to the timeline of this life, Scholar Su should have written this essay 3 years later during the palace examination. My hands trembled, almost unable to hold the paper steady. There's only one possibility. Jiang Rong has also been reborn. Once this was confirmed, I felt as if I had fallen into an icy abyss. In his previous life, Jiang Rong was already sweet-tongued but ruthless, with a deep and calculating mind. Now, with the experience and memories from his past life, he would only be more formidable than before. The only advantage is that he currently cannot confirm whether I have also been reborn. If he could confirm it, he would know that there is no room for reconciliation between us, and he would no longer repeatedly come to me to compete for favor. With my mind clear, I gave the teacher some silver as hush money before returning to my own courtyard, but I found Jiang Rong waiting for me just outside the courtyard. "Madam, was what I said true?" He smiled at me, revealing 2 deep dimples. "Shouldn't you reward me?" I slowly smiled. "Naturally, there must be a reward." I called my personal maid to bring some silver and gave it to Jiang Rong. Jiang Rong looked at the silver with deep disappointment. "I don't want silver. I only wish to be personally taught by you." "Madam, just like Brother Chen, I didn't take the bait and only said, 'The tutor showed me your essay.'" I clearly saw a sharp change deep in Jiang Rong's eyes. He asked me, "What does Madam think of my writing?" This was a test. My decision not to adopt Jiang Rong in this life had already aroused his suspicion. He was testing whether I had also been reborn. "Your literary talent is brilliant and truly impressive," I praised sincerely. "It's hard to imagine such a mature piece of writing came from a 12-year-old boy." Jiang Rong smiled, his shoulders and neck visibly relaxing. He finally confirmed that I was not reborn. Then, "Could you also accompany me in my studies?" I shook my head. "Your studies are already excellent enough. Reading more now won't improve much. It would be better to go out and have fun, explore more. Once you enter the court as an official, start a family and build a career, you won't have such carefree days anymore." I smiled and took the silver from the maid's hand, stuffing it into Jiang Rong's palm. "Go have fun. If you run out of silver, just come and tell me, and I'll give you more." Jiang Rong blinked, clearly tempted. Turning around, I sneered inwardly. I knew Jiang Rong's nature all too well. He has a very playful nature and simply can't sit still while studying. I have to personally supervise him during homework time to keep him from getting distracted, especially now that he believes he has the cheat code of rebirth. Thinking that handling these elementary assignments is a piece of cake, he's even less inclined to take his studies seriously. "My dear Ronga, didn't you feel in your past life that my pushing you to improve was harming you? Then go ahead and play to your heart's content. When it comes to studies, it's like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. By the time you regret it, it will already be too late." Of course, Jiang Rong is not to be underestimated. To make him completely drop his guard against me, that very night, I severely punished Jiang Chen for cheating. The sound of the whip echoed through the room, loud enough for the entire courtyard to hear. "Let you cheat, I'll let you cheat. If there's a next time, I'll send you to the northern desert to serve in the army." In the room, Jiang Chen watched me whipping the pillow and whispered, "Madam, be careful not to hurt your hand. Should I do it for you?" My hand was indeed a bit sore, so I handed the whip to Jiang Chen. While continuing to whip the pillow, he loudly begged for mercy. "Madam, I'm wronged. I'm truly wronged. Then, with the aggrieved tone of someone forced to confess under torture, she cried out, "I won't dare do it again. Please spare me this time, madam. This kid, usually so quiet, is actually quite a good actor." After putting on a convincing show, Jiang Chen and I had some snacks together. Was madam putting on that performance for Jiang Rong to see? Not only that, but also for the other Jiang family descendants. I ate the jujube paste pastry leisurely and said, "After all, you are not the Marquis's child. Now that you've suddenly gained power, the other descendants are bound to be jealous of you, even if it wasn't Jiang Rong. Someone else would have caused trouble for you in the future, so it's better to let them think that being adopted by me isn't such a great thing. We'll keep a low profile and make our fortune quietly." Jiang Chen's eyes flickered slightly, seeing that he hadn't eaten anything. I pushed the plate of jujube paste pastries toward him. "Eat up." He looked troubled. "I don't like sweets." "Is that so?" I said. "Then I can't finish them all by myself either. Why don't you take them and share them with the maids and servants?" Jiang Chen acknowledged my words and carried the plate outside. On the way, he encountered a servant, who exclaimed, "Oh, isn't this the date paste pastry that the mistress made herself? What, are you going to share it with us?" Jiang Chen fell silent, then spoke with certainty. "No, madam asked me to take it back to eat." After saying that, he walked away carrying the plate, leaving the servant with an enigmatic. After the news of me whipping Jiang Chen spread throughout the Marquis residence, Jiang Rong became even more arrogant. He acted like a tyrant in the school, and even if he didn't attend classes, the teacher wouldn't bother him. Thus, Jiang Rong's previously suppressed playfulness was greatly ignited, and he befriended a bunch of good-for-nothing friends, frequenting theaters and indulging in pleasure-seeking outside. Everyone says his unrestrained and romantic demeanor is a perfect inheritance from his father, Jiang Feng. When the news reached me, I smiled faintly and spoke up for Jiang Rong. "Brother Rong is clever. Even without studying, he ranks first in his class. It's better for him to have more fun." Turning around, I continued to teach Jiang Chen to study hard. Half a month later, as soon as I returned to the courtyard, I saw him standing there with a young lady. The girl appeared to be around 13 or 14 years old, standing there with her hands hanging down, and she was quite pretty. "Madam, I noticed you were short of hands in your household. I happened to come across this maid on the road selling herself to bury her father, so I used the silver you rewarded me to buy her," Jiang Rong said ingratiatingly. "On one hand, it's a good deed, and on the other, she's clever and will surely serve you well." The maid was indeed quick-witted and immediately chimed in. "This humble servant is Yumai. From now on, in life I am your person, in death I am your ghost." Yumai, my nails dug imperceptibly into my palms. I glanced over coldly almond-shaped eyes in an oval face. Who else could it be but that courtesan who had flaunted her power before me in my past life? Only now, she hadn't yet blossomed into that captivating charm. She was still just a young girl, I understand. Selling herself to bury her father, nothing more than a well-crafted, sympathetic tale. Yumai was redeemed by Jiang Rong from the brothel. Yumai was sold into the brothel at 13 and became the courtesan queen by 16. At present, her value wasn't too high, so redeeming her didn't cost much silver. Thus, Jiang Rong redeemed her ahead of time. First, it saved money compared to doing so later. Second, it allowed him to spend time with her in the mansion early on. And third, it placed a spy by my side. One arrow, multiple targets. Jiang Rong is truly not to be underestimated. Back in the day, I was the one who taught him to read the *36 stratagems*. Now that he's playing deceiving the heavens to cross the sea, I'll play countering one stratagem with another. So, with a gentle smile, I patted Yuamei's hand and said, "Indeed, you are a clever girl. In that case, you shall stay by my side." Yumai served me for 3 months, constantly praising Jiang Rong. For instance, when we go to the academy, she would say, "Brother Rong has the best academic performance. His essays are always praised by the teacher, and scholars outside take pride in composing poetry with him. He is truly brilliant." I sneered inwardly. He is naturally brilliant, after all. Those essays and poems he writes are not his own work. The real author will only sigh in the end, wondering how their inspiration was already written by someone else years ago. When passing by the small kitchen, Yumai would also say, last time the young masters went hunting together, Rong brought back a large piece of venison and specifically sent it to the small kitchen, insisting that it all be prepared for the mistress to eat. He is truly very filial, I sneered coldly again. Jiang Rong did indeed send me roasted venison, but my constitution is weak, and I simply cannot eat such intensely fire-roasted venison. On the contrary, Jiang Chen would always cook me a bowl of plain porridge before heading to the academy, adding various medicinal herbs he had carefully studied from medical books. Who is sincere is clear at a glance. Yumai still tried to speak up for Jiang Rong. I think it must be lonely for Brother Chen to be the only one in the house. Why don't you also let Brother Rong? Excellent, the real topic has arrived. I immediately cut her off, teasing with a smile. What, do you have feelings for Jiang Rong? Otherwise, why can't you go 3 sentences without mentioning him? Should I transfer you to his side? Yumai was startled and quickly tried to make amends. How could that be? This servant's heart belongs entirely to you, madam. But after all, when I sold myself to bury my father, it was young Master Jiang Rong who saved me. He has been kind to me, so naturally, I pay more attention to him. You don't like Jiang Rong? I serve my lady with all my heart. How could I have such distracting thoughts in my mind? Yumai looked righteous and serious, but in fact, I had known it all along. I had also planted my own informants by Jiang Rong's side, and they told me that Jiang Rong and Yumai frequently met in secret. Jiang Rong also promised Yumai that once he became the legitimate son of the Marquis's household, he would take her as his concubine, and later find an opportunity to elevate her status, making her the mistress of the Marquis's household. Isn't this empty promise exactly the same as the one from the previous life? No wonder Yumai was tempted. Even if Jiang Rong hadn't been adopted by me, he was still the biological son of the Marquis of Yongning. For Yumai to marry him, even as a concubine, let alone as the principal wife, would truly be like a sparrow flying onto a branch and turning into a phoenix. All right, I know of your loyalty, I instructed Yumai. Go check if my medicine is ready. Yumai responded and walked toward the door. Just as Jiang Chen was entering the room, Jiang Chen was holding my medicine in his hands. Seeing Yumai nearly bump into him, he quickly sidestepped to avoid her. Yumai looked up and saw Jiang Chen dressed in white, his ink-black hair tied up with a jade crown, his eyes and brows carrying a cool aloofness. These half-grown youths grew faster than the wind, in less than half a year. Jiang Chen had shed most of his childish appearance, his shoulders were straight and broad,